Hey folks, Brendan from Bluelight here. Now this video today is for those of you who have got your promotion board ahead of you for Police Scotland. But listen in if that's not you, because it might be useful for all sorts of other aspects of the police recruitment journey, and also for once you're actually in the police in terms of specialist interviews or promotion boards for other forces. So hopefully you'll find this of interest. But there's a comment that appeared in the Bluelight in-service development cadre. That's a Facebook group that's just for serving regular police officers, and there's a link below if you want to join it. And it was saying that I'm a constable, I've got my sergeant's board coming up for Police Scotland, any top tips? So I thought I'd give you some top tips. Now I've already done one video on an operational scenario and how you do more than just enforcement. You do trust building, prevention, advocacy and communication, and hopefully I've explained it sufficiently. Next thing is a briefing. Now I think what this might involve is a load of incidents being put in front of you, reports, emails, something's going on at this moment in time, and you're being asked to give a briefing on how you would prioritise and deal with all of those issues, and some of them might be interconnected, to maybe your inspector or an operational chief inspector. So one of the things that I think is really helpful here is knowing how to prioritise in a really systematic way. Because if everything is a priority, nothing is. That's the one thing I learned as a neighbourhood inspector in particular, that if everything is a priority, absolutely nothing is a priority. So you've got to have some kind of mechanism to decide what is urgent and what is important, and to distinguish between the two. Now, the model I use now and the model I used back then is something called the Eisenhower Matrix. And this came from the President of the United States, I don't know which one it was, President Eisenhower, surprisingly, who said that things that are urgent are seldom important, and things that are important are seldom urgent. Did you get that? What he's saying basically is that there's very little that is actually urgent and important. No matter what other people may say about this is really urgent, this is really important, well, of course they will. Everyone is going to say that. So this matrix here will help you prioritize things depending on the urgency and the importance of that particular issue. Now you might want to also think in terms of determining whether something is important or not, about threat, harm and risk. If it's got anything to do with members of the public or police officers, and there's any indication that someone might come to harm or they're vulnerable for any reason, then I'd use, the standard sort of threat, harm, risk way of thinking about the importance of whatever that issue might be. So the first one is things that are important and urgent. If something is important, it means it needs dealing with by you, okay, by you. So if this is a sergeant's board and you're going to put yourself in the shoes of a sergeant, it means that you need to take responsibility for this, and you need to action it, whatever it might be. Whatever the incident might be, you've got to take charge of it and you've got to action it. If it's urgent, it needs doing now. It needs doing now. And you're going to have to drop other things. You're going to have a rationale for that. This is where things like the NDM is going to come into play, National Decision Model. So the next category are things that are important but not urgent. So you know that it needs doing, and you know it needs doing by you, but it's not urgent. So this is something you can diary for the future. And remember, if it's important but not urgent, and you diary it for in 2 days' time because it needs doing in 3 days' time, then by the time 2 days' time comes, it's actually moved from that box into that box because now it's urgent because it needs doing. So this isn't something you can just let fester. The things in this box are not like bottles of red wine. They don't get better with age. They just get more problematic and start going corked and a bit funny, wonky wine. So those of you who know me know that I use all the sort of analogies like this. It's how my brain works. So the next category here are things that are not important but urgent. So you're going to be a sergeant, so you're going to have to learn the art of delegating things. So things that are not important but urgent, you can delegate to other people. You can give these tasks to other people, but one of the things I would ensure that you talk about here is that you always make sure that the person understands the task. Best way of doing that, get them to repeat it back so that you know they've understood it. Make sure it's in writing as well, if that is something that's needed to ensure that that person really understands what they're being tasked to do. And always, always, always make sure that there is a reporting back mechanism so that once the task has been completed, they come back to you, and that you also have an instruction there so that if there's any problems or any issues and you make it clear what those sort of issues might be, then they report back to you straight away. They don't wait until in 24 hours time, which would have been perhaps the reporting time if everything goes to plan. So problems, issues, come back and tell me now. Come back and tell me, because it may elevate this from the not important but urgent into the important and urgent box. Is this making sense so far, folks? I love this Eisenhower Matrix. It just helps categorize things really neatly and nicely. This box here, things that are not important and not urgent. And you might be thinking, well, everything has an element of. Yeah, but at some point you're going to have to make some decisions about things that just can't get dealt with by you or by anyone else. They're things that are just not going to get dealt with. And you are always going to be faced with calls like this. You know this because you're an operational police officer. You know that there's a lot of calls that come in where you think, why are we even taking that call? But it has been taken. And once it gets into the system, you know that the process takes over. And before you know it, this one call that has got nothing to do with the police, and never will have anything to do with the police, but it's been logged as an incident, will probably touch about 8 or 9 different people by the time it gets to the point where someone just goes, I don't even know what to do with this. An example springs to mind. I know it's a bit far-fetched. There's a peacock on top of my garage, and it keeps defecating all over the garden. And that got recorded as animal-related antisocial behaviour. By the time I spotted it in the queue, it had probably touched, you think about the touch points, every time a job is created, one person who's created it, the call taker, has taken a call, that's touched one person. And then it goes to the dispatcher, and so it's touched 2 now. And then it goes to someone who is out on response, the response sergeant, to take a look at it, and that's 3 people now. And they knock it back and say, look, could you just delay it by 4 hours because we haven't got anyone available. And then the 4-hour target gets missed, so it gets flagged up to the supervisor in the comms room. Can you see how it touches so many different people? And because the call has been taken, there's an expectation from that member of the public that the police are going to deal with it. Am I right there? So just think about the amount of touch points an incident that is not urgent and not important actually has. Something that someone's got to make a decision somewhere and say, this is not a matter for the police. It's not a matter for anyone, actually. This is just something that happens. Like peacocks just happen. Or I'm going to delegate it actually to RSPCA, but I'm not going to call them. I'm going to get the individual, this citizen. They're not a passive receiver of services. They're a citizen, or they should be. And then you're going to say, yeah, but not everyone's like that. I know that. I know that, but put the responsibility back on them, because as soon as you say, I'll call the RSPCA, then again, you're creating more touch points within the system. Put it back to them, job done. And I know some forces are probably really good at doing this, but it wouldn't surprise me if on the board, on this exercise, they give you some incidents that fit into this category. And what they'd be interested in is your rationale behind making decisions about things that, all right, there's always going to be an element of risk. You know, you're going to say, yeah, but what if? But someone's got to make a decision. And as long as you've got a rationale behind your decision that this is not important, it's not urgent, think about threat, harm and risk, then you're going to be bomb-proof, aren't you? Especially if you've got your good old, day book, see? 7 years out of the police, and I've still got day books. So record it in your day book, job done. All right, so what do you think, folks? Helpful? I hope so. There's all sorts of other different models. I mean, there's loads of different ways of managing in-tray type exercises. But I hope that's just given you a few ideas, a few things to think about in terms of how you would deliver your briefing and the order in which you deliver all the different things that you've got to deal with in your briefing. All right, folks, I mentioned the Facebook groups, didn't I, before? A shameless plug. The links are down below. And if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or something, then subscribe or like or press some button. I don't know. Is that what you do? So anyway, as long as this was helpful for you, I'll catch up with you very soon. Bye-bye for now.